Hello and welcome to the Choralosophy Podcast, a weekly podcast whose mission is multifaceted. Each week when you tune in, you will find episodes that question best practices, challenge music education dogma, facilitate conversations about touchy topics, demonstrate pedagogies, and conversations where colleagues learn from each other. This is episode 270, Balancing Tradition with Innovation, with Jocelyn Hagen and Timothy C. Takach. The choral music art form and the economics of the art form are changing. And that makes some people uncomfortable. But others, like Jocelyn and Tim, are driving their fair share of that innovation. They are the co-owners of Graphite Publishing, which is an online digital distributor and publisher of sheet music. And they join me today to discuss their journey in the choral music industry, the evolution of their publishing company, and the challenges and joys of collaborating as composers and business owners while spouses. I have lots of questions for them about that early on in the episode. They explore the impact of digital sheet music on the sheet music economy and the balance between traditional and contemporary music, not only in live programs, but in the catalogs of publishers and in the catalogs of the student experience. This dynamic duo shares insights into their creative process, particularly in the creation of their new work, Rose Ever Blooming, and their experiences recording this recently with the renowned Voce 8 Foundation Choir. Throughout the discussion, they emphasize the significance of innovation in choral music while respecting its rich traditions. So tune in and stick around all the way to the end, have your thinking stimulated and challenged, and then of course weigh in and let us know what you think over on the Choralosophers Facebook page. You can also drop comments outside of the Facebook environment over on Substack on a variety of blogs, posts, conversation starters there. There are all kinds of ways to let me know what you're thinking and what I should be talking about next. Choir directors, music educators, show planners, you pour your heart into your music. Shouldn't your events get the same attention? That's where Ludus comes in. Sell tickets, promote your concerts, and fundraise with ease. Selling merchandise and concessions? Ludus Retail makes in-person sales effortless. Running choir camps or workshops? They have a classes feature that keeps registration simple, and when you need help, the live support team is ready to pop up with real answers from real people. The best part? It's completely free for organizations. Thousands of music programs already trust Ludus because great music deserves more than just a ticketing system. Are you a director new to the profession? Or are you a seasoned director who is in a new place? One of my favorite tips for generating interest in the program and to instill buy-in is to plan a trip. There are so many options. You can go to Orlando, you can go to Ireland, or you can perform in a parade or a theme park. You can even take the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York. Wherever you end up, not only will your current crew look forward to the trip, but younger students will count the days until it's their turn to go. If you have no idea where to start, connect with Kaleidoscope Adventures at mykatrip.com. A big shout out goes to the producers and Inner Circle over at the Patreon page. These are folks that are really dedicated to keeping the lights on here at this show. Venture Studios, Chandler Smith, Brian Long, Michael Herron, Kyle Peterson, Steve and Kathy Kakachik, David Kowalczyk, Max Jackson, Angie Schilling, Rebecca Chalk, RJ McCracken, Michael Shimp, and Kyle Siddons. Okay, everybody, I'm here with Jocelyn Hagen and Tim Takach, who have both appeared on Choralosophy before, but never together. And so this is like, I've been excited about this all week. So Jocelyn and Tim, welcome.
Well, thank you. Welcome to you as well.
We're happy to be here.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
this is going to be fun. Well, it's been a little while, so why don't you guys both, you can rock, paper, scissors it a little bit if you each want to introduce yourselves and tell people a little bit about what you do, for those who might not know.
Yeah, I'm Jocelyn Hagen, composer. We're based in Minnesota. We are also the co-owners and founders of Graphite Publishing, which is coming up on its 20th year in 2006. Wow. Yeah, so that's a pretty big anniversary for us. We're really excited about it. And the company's been growing exponentially in the past 5 to 10 years. So that's been really exciting. I write a lot of vocal music, a lot of work for choir, art song. I've got another opera that I'm going to be working on soon. And I love to do things with projections, so multimedia works.
That's you. So now it's my turn.
Now it's your turn.
Well, I'm Tim Takach, also a composer, also co-owner of Graphite Publishing. And most of my work is in the vocal field as well. And in the last 5 years, I've had a lot of fun working in larger form works. And so writing large a cappella works. I wrote a ballet a couple of years ago that's an adaptation of Frankenstein. I wrote an opera that premiered a year ago, and it has opera that premiered a year ago and has 3 new productions this season. And just sort of having fun figuring out what else there is in the compositional world.
That's awesome. Now, of course, one thing you didn't really lead with, which is that you're married to each other.
That's true.
Yeah, we didn't used to advertise that at all. It was a secret.
We saved that.
Intentionally?
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's also why I kept my maiden name. My married name on my license says Takach, but I'm also the only daughter of an only son, of an only son, of an only son. So I really did want to hold on to my name. But yeah, we wanted to develop our careers kind of independently. Yeah. And then we started composing together and performing together. And then the cat was really out of the bag. So that's kind of what happened.
Okay. That's interesting to me because I also work in choral music contexts with my wife, and so I have just all kinds of like my own personal anecdotes about why that can be both amazing and also challenging. Are you willing to share any of both of those with us? Like, why is it awesome to work in business in choral music with your spouse, but then why is it also challenging sometimes?
Yeah, well, I think the easiest answer is that we just get it. We understand everything the other person is going through to a certain extent. We don't have to explain any of the shop talk. It's just sort of natural. And we can commiserate, but also brainstorm with each other if that is a wanted part of the conversation. I learned early on that Jocelyn doesn't always want to be collaborative about ideas and topics. Sometimes she just needs to be heard and just wants to be seen and wants to say something out loud. So sometimes it's a sounding board character and sometimes it's a collaborative brainstorming character. And knowing the difference between those two is fairly important for us to stay healthy. Right?
Yes, sometimes I just need to vent. I need to say stuff, and I don't want you to solve the problem for me.
Nope.
I just need to be able to say it out loud to someone who will understand.
I'm done fixing. I'm done fixing.
Sure.
Right. Do you ever have to butt heads about business decisions with Graphite and stuff like that?
All the time.
Yeah. Yeah, we have different viewpoints on several things and go about things differently. And it's hard because there's so much work to do within the company that part of it, we used to have very separate roles where you handled the website and the actual sales things and all of those kind of logistics. And then I was more in charge of contracts and being the artist liaison for the works and the editor. And so that it was really easy to kind of divide up the work that way. But as the company has grown, there have been, growing pains and we're doing more, and it's not always as black and white as to whose job this is going to be or which way we're going to do things.
And also it's, the company is tied to us as the co-owners. And so we just always have to decide how are we going to grow the company? How are we going to push forward? How are we going to expand? How are we not going to expand? What is our budget for any sort of advertising thing we want to do? And so those business conversations just tend to take a lot out of us because that's not our wheelhouse, the business part of it. The artistic part is a lot of fun. And I'd say we agree 9 times out of 10 on the artistic part, but the business part is just a different animal and it's just difficult to navigate.
Right. So it sounds like you're describing a scenario where there isn't technically a boss between the two of you. You just or is there? Like, is that okay? So it's like a co-owner, like you own it together.
Yeah.
And you run it together. That makes sense. I know for me and Beth, the challenge is the reversal of roles in contexts because there are scenarios where I am conductor, she is soprano, and then in our home life, in all genuine honesty, between you and me and whoever's listening, she's in charge. Mm-hmm. Like in the house, she is in charge of this house. Yeah. And then in the rehearsal, I have to be in charge. And so that's the tension for us is like, when do I get to be in charge? and then when do I have to make an executive decision that she might disagree with? Because she's also an excellent musician and she's sitting there and I'm the director and I have to make a decision and we do that. So we don't run a business together. That's where a lot of my curiosity comes from of like just how that would be. I'm trying to picture she and I doing that together with that dynamic. And so that's where a lot of that. So thank you for sharing that. You feel like that as your roles and as the company grows, 20 years, by the way. Oh my goodness.
Right?
I didn't like think of it as that old.
We didn't either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
My
it ages
goodness.
us.
And so how would you describe the growth of the company? And I don't expect you to like divulge, financial information or anything like
Yeah.
that. But like when you started it, when it was just an idea for you guys versus what it is now, how would you describe just the difference of what graphite is?
Well, I guess I would start with how it's perceived. And I think that when we started, we had a lot to prove because we were this upstart, small independent publisher, didn't have a lot of clout, didn't have a lot of music to sell, had a small roster of composers. And so I felt like we had to sort of find a way into the industry and show people that we had value, and to show people that it was okay to take a risk on a non-name publisher, right? Which I think is a lot of trust in the industry comes from who is that publisher? I trust them or do I not trust them? So, at the beginning, that's what it felt like. And now I feel like there's a lot more trust from the consumers, from conductors and singers that we feel like we know we have value and they know we have value, and that's not really a part of the conversation anymore. It's been, our music has been showing up in a lot of places that we dreamed about when we started the company, honor choirs and all states and festivals and all sorts of things. So I think the perception of the company has changed quite a bit in my estimation.
Yeah. And also, I think at the beginning, I think to be expected, we really had to ask people, hey, will you please be a part of this company? We're starting up. We don't really know what we're doing, but we have this idea. And so at first it was a lot of our friends, and we did also a big call for scores and found some good things in the call for scores that are still on the site, but not a lot. And then now, there are a lot of people that want to be a part of Graphite, a lot of composers that really like the model, especially that want to be a part of it. And we're still just a small company, so we can't take on too many people at any given time. So,
Right.
And I think realizing the capacity issues that we had as a mom and pop for so long was essential. And 10 years ago, we opened our doors to being a digital distributor as well, where we were selling the music from other independent publishers and composer publishers. And that, I think, was a game changer for us, because now we no longer had 120 pieces, but we had 650 or 800 or whatever the number is at that point and what it is now. We always wanted Graphite to be a destination for online shopping for choral music, and adding that many names and pieces to the catalog, I think, made that easier for folks to find what they were looking for.
Right. Now, another thing I'm curious about is how much would you say the digital sheet music in general, but choral music obviously is the wheelhouse. How much has that industry changed in the 20 years that you've been doing this? Because I feel like you guys would have had a front row seat to the whole thing.
Yeah. When we first started, people thought we were crazy. They're like, you're just going to have PDFs for download online. Everyone's just going to photocopy it. And we're like, don't people already just photocopy music? We decided to adopt a philosophy that most people want to do the right thing and want to pay for the music. And we made it simple by making it easy to access and also not overly expensive. I think that was a big part of it when we started online, was that our choral scores were $1 a piece for each copy of the PDF. They're not that anymore, but at the time
I remember the good old days.
The good old days. We were modeling that after iTunes, because a track would be 99 cents, right? And
Right.
you get a cool track. So, and that's one of the things that's really been changing now is, more and more publishers and distributors offering digital downloads, and, what should the price for those items be?
Sheet music back then, you could get a printed octavo for $1.35,
Yeah.
or $1.50. And so our philosophy was like, well, we're not storing or shipping or printing any of this stuff. We're passing on that work to the customer. So they should be paying less for what they're getting than if they ordered it from a sheet music dealer. So we just wanted to be under that price point too. But PDF downloads and digital delivery is much more common these days. I think most people have access to it. But I think that the argument is still valid about how do you price a digital piece of sheet music, and is it Does it cost less because there's more work being done on the customer's end? Or does it cost the same because you're getting the same product? You're getting 3.5 minutes of music, so it's going to cost you the same no matter what. So that argument is still out there, and there's a variety of stances on that, even on our website. Yeah. And from our publishers, there's a difference in opinion on how things should be priced. And ultimately, we let our publishers decide what their price is to be sold on our website. So we don't have control over that. But it's been interesting and sort of gratifying to see it take hold and to see people accept that as a means of buying, printing, and then holding on to their sheet music. Because I think in the past, a photocopy was disposable. It wasn't worth more than the 7 cents it takes to print off one page on your copier. And I think now they've got that license, that watermark on it that says, you bought 50 of these, so hold on to all 50 and come back if you need more. I think people are starting to understand that they need to hold on to these and take care of them.
Yeah, that makes sense. And ultimately, the customer is going to decide which pricing model they will win. Across the whole industry, that will, because one of the things I've noticed in the 20 years that you guys have been around, of course, that also approximately maps onto my teaching life, is that of course, the big publishers, the ones that were selling exclusively the paper copies 20 something years ago, are now having to do the digital sales just to keep up with the demand for that. So it's not as if Graphite and Music Spoke or any of those other companies that are doing the online stuff, they're not the only player in that game anymore either. And so I'm curious too about how you guys feel like the incentives for publishing in kind of I feel like it's no longer, this is kind of a rambling question, but I feel like it's no longer a digital versus traditional anymore because digital is everywhere. It's more like a big legacy establishment publishers versus the more small mom and pop organizations, and I feel like they publish different types of music with different incentives for what gets published.
Yeah, I feel like when we started Graphite, we referred to it as a boutique publishing house, and I think we want to maintain that as we continue to grow. I don't think we'll never reach the size of some of those other larger, more traditional, longer standing publishing houses. I think we'll always be leaner and just more, what's a good way to put it?
Well, risk taking, I guess. We have the luxury to be able to publish a lot of stuff that other folks wouldn't, because we don't have to print it and let it sit on a shelf and ship it out and hope that we sell the initial 4,000 copies that we've printed. And I think because of that, I would hope that Graphite continues to be a place where people can come and expect something different. They can come to look at our catalog and say, oh, I haven't seen any music like this anywhere else. And I'm proud of that. And I would hope that we continue to do that. Along the way, we started out almost exclusively selling that kind of music where it was too long, it was in a different language, it had a cello part, it was just a little bit different from the mainstream.
The stuff no one else would publish, right?
Yeah, stuff that should be out there because it's quality, but nobody else would publish it because it's weird and it's hard. It doesn't match that middle of the bell curve, right? Along the way, we discovered that if we want the business to be profitable, we also have to have music that is accessible to an audition 9th and 10th grade choir. So we've, in the past 15 years, we've started to seek that music out, but haven't changed our stance of this needs to be unique and different and fresh and really tight. And so I think those two things together will continue to define what Graphite is.
Yeah. My favorite way to get sheet music, because I'm a procrastinator, is online digital sheet music. And there are 2 places that will accept the Choralosophy discount code that are great places to add to your list to search. Of course, you have graphitepublishing.com. You can search by difficulty, you can search by voicing. It's a great website to find something quickly, but also to find music of very high quality. And then there's endeavormusicpublishing.com, run by Ryan Main, but he is now also expanding quite a bit of composers and new music of wide variety of age levels and difficulty levels there as well. And both of those websites will knock 10% off when you use Choralosophy at checkout. No, that's interesting because that's exactly the question I was digging at with the incentive structure for the big publishers versus yours. Is like I notice when I dig around on Graphite, if I'm looking for something, Graphite is where I started going years and years ago. If I needed, it's funny that you call it a boutique publisher, because I would go there if I needed something like a boutique piece, if that makes sense. Like I needed something that's only like 65 seconds. Well, Walton's not going to publish that,
Yeah.
but I need some music for when my kids are walking from the back of the Performing Arts Center to the front of the Performing Arts Center. So I found like a random little round on Graphite that is, it fills the time. It's perfect. It's cute. It's, it's going to work, but it would never be the piece that I would find on J.W. Pepper's website, because you need to be able to get the whole octavo with 3 minutes long, and you got to have it like check all these boxes. And so there's all these specialized things that you can find there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and I think what it really speaks to as well is that, these larger publishers back in the day, they still have some of these people, the staff writers, people who are just on staff that are writing whatever they need to have written. Whereas our composers in Graphite, most of these pieces come into being because they are commissioned, which in itself comes from usually a really specific ask of, this is what I'm looking for, or this is what I'd like, or this is what the composer is feeling would be fun and interesting at the time. So that attitude from the get-go, from the very beginning of the conception of the piece, I think really makes a difference.
Well, it calls into question as a creator, the balance of writing for the art, writing for the music, and or writing for the market, right? Are you writing something that you want to get sold a lot? Or are you writing something because you have an itch to scratch artistically, that you have to figure this thing out and you want to try something new or different, and you've never heard something like this before, so you're going to write it and figure out what that is. They're two different things, and they do cross over. Like that Venn diagram can overlap, and you can find something in the middle that does both things. But I think at the outset, purpose of sitting down to write on either side of that fence would be very different. I think you'd set out to write something very different if you were choosing one over the other. Yeah,
no, absolutely. And I think that what we're talking about right now also contributes to the philosophical debate within our field and the field of choral music in general, which is, are we a profession or an art form that is stuck in tradition and can't get past its own history, etc., or are we an art form that is losing its tradition, and that should we fight to preserve those monumental parts of the art form that are so crucial to what got us here? And of course, I've always thought that was a silly debate, because it's obviously both. You can't just say, well, Bach is over, so let's not do any more of that, or he's so passé, because you need musicians with the chops to sing Bach, to sing a lot of the modern stuff too. Like you've got to build those things, but at the same time, if you don't push forward and innovate, then you die. And I know that's something that both of you are passionate about. And so I see Graphite as an interesting case study there, where I'll go through this analogy and then I want you guys to react to it. I think of it like, for the same reason that people go to McDonald's. They go to McDonald's because they want to buy a cheeseburger that they know ahead of time what it will taste like. And they don't want to take a risk that maybe there's a good cook that day. They want to know that my $8 will get me the cheeseburger, and that it will taste the same a month from now. Or if I go to a different city on a different side of the continent, it will taste the same, and I will get that $8. And there's some value to that, like in the world. Sometimes people just don't want to be surprised, and that's fine. The analogy that I think of for our art form is that some of the big publishers, and this is not hate to them, they have to publish things that they know will sell. They don't have the incentive to take a bunch of risks. Whereas you guys, you talked about already, don't have the overhead to necessarily worry about that risk. And so you can throw it on there, and it allows certain experimental things to occur, that some of that tradition, I think, that when we feel like we're stuck to this tradition, it's partly because of the business incentives of our art form. Of like, you just can't sell the thing if you don't know for sure ahead of time it's going to sell, and so then we get stuck. That was a lot. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think about how a lot of that music that they know will sell, and you've got your certain composers in that series or under that publishing house, and the music that they write and continue to write over the years becomes formulaic. And in some ways, like, I totally get it. Teacher goes to the site and is like, I need another piece by this person because I know it will get the job done, and I know that my singers can handle it and my pianist can handle it. Just, it checks all those boxes. So I get that, but there should be this other side that pushes and that isn't scared to take risks. And
right.
So there's room for all of us here in this model, I think.
Well, and how cool is it though that you can have living composers writing now, this year, last year, that are considered a go-to and a solid. Like, oh, it's a new piece by so-and-so. I trust that already. I will give that a shot. And so that's a really cool thing where you can take a risk that's not a risk. So that's one side of it. The other side is that emerging composers and composers that are trying to make their musical mark on the world are looking at the programs on stage and saying, what is getting programmed? If I want a spot here, I need to be one of those people. I need to be writing music that can fill that spot. And so it's really easy for an emerging artistic voice, who already is trying to figure out who they are by being derivative of all the people that they've listened to and liked over the years, to further that and say, okay, well, I'm going to sound like this person so I can fight for a spot on that program. Rather than saying, what is not included in this program? How can I add something that feels like it's me, that would have value in this program but wouldn't be like anything else on the show? So the I'm gonna call it cheap, but it's not cheap. But the easy risk is to program something that we know what it is, we know the value, we know the composer, we know the sound. That's a yes for me, even though I don't know the piece. Or do we go further, and if we're going to introduce our singers to new contemporary rep alongside all the classics, what is that contemporary rep? And can it be even more risky just to show those students what else is out there? I mean, you're in a great spot because as a teacher, your opinion would almost have to be 50-50, right? Because you have to expose these kids to all sorts of music that this might be their only couple years to sing these things and to get to know it from the inside out. And so that's your role. Our role as composers doesn't include some of the traditional music unless we're being inspired by it. And what I love about my work is that I'm still singing a lot, or as much as I can. And the music that I sing is not like the music that I'd write, but I have no choice but to learn from it as I'm in rehearsal, figuring out what this piece was that was written 250 years ago. How can that inform my work now, and what can I learn from it? So I love that part of my daily life too.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I share a parallel in that I sing also a lot, and I sing music with adult professionals that I would never program for my high school kids, but it also informs my teaching. Like it gives me a sense of what is possible. It gives me a sense of historical perspective. Whereas I might do something, by Palestrina in a pro group that's 9 minutes long and too hard for the kids at school, but that doesn't mean I can't find something that's 2.5 minutes long that they can handle, and that they can still be exposed to that, and you're pulling those inspirations in. And so I wonder, too, what both of you guys think about that balance of tradition versus like how should we thread that needle? Because there are so many different opinions about that. Because Tim, you mentioned that, as a teacher, it is my role to expose kids to a wider range of things, but actually not everybody in our profession agrees with that. There's a lot of people, if you look at programs like at ACDA conventions, it's like 80% new music.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some that are concerned about the balance. So how do you think about that stuff?
Yeah,
Acknowledging your bias as composers of new music.
Right,
That's
exactly.
the thing.
Yeah, and I used to teach a bit at North Dakota State University, and Joanne Miller was the director of choral activities at the time, and I remember she was very passionate about, and I think when it's university especially, she said, they really need to know music of all the different times. And she programmed Schoenberg one year with her choir, and I was like,
wow,
dang, that's impressive, bold. And they did a great job with it too. They nailed it. They could do it. And I just really admired that. I thought that was really neat. And yeah, I think that the most creative programming that I see is the programming that really does bring both the older music and more traditional music and the newer music together and finding similar themes and that's the great stuff, right? Is if you can figure out how to meld the two together in a really organic and beautiful way. And that's not easy to do. It takes a lot of time to program a concert like that. I get that. Yeah.
Well, and we just finished co-writing a piece together that is a large Christmas oratorio. And everybody's always saying we're looking for more new music for Christmas because we're we always need it. Every year we need an hour of Christmas music, whatever it is. And so people are hungry for it. But in this project, it felt like a risk to write new music for Christmas and hope that people were ready for it. And so, a 50-minute piece that is new requires a lot to put it on stage, and it's going to take the place of something, right? It's going to take the place of 9 octavo Christmas arrangements that everybody knows and likes, or it's going to take the place of the Messiah. This is a work with chorus and orchestra, so it's more likely to take the place of the Messiah. And how can you kick out the Messiah? You can't, right? So organizations have what they owe their audience through Christmas programming specifically, where if it's not the piece, it's the song or it's the melody that people, that's why they're coming. That's why they're coming to hear Christmas shows, because they need that box checked on their nostalgic, holiday list. So in our piece, we added a couple of carols throughout to give people that. But like one of the movements that Jocelyn worked on a lot was an arrangement of Gabriel's Message. And I had known John Rutter's version of that, or is it David Wilcox? I can't remember who did it, but I think it was John Rutter. But from the Carols for Choirs with Contus, we sang that piece all the time. And so I had a version in my head that was just there. And I said, I think you should take lead on this, because I can't get out of the tradition of what I think that piece is and what it should be. And she turned it on its head. And it's vibrant and exciting and virtuosic and really, really cool. So it does both, right? It gives people that melody that they know, but it's so fresh and unique that they're going to come away thinking they've never heard anything like that before.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, to me, it's like first of all, I love Gabriel's Message. It's such a fun piece, and that is one that you have in the extended work. Is that also something that somebody could get just because they like that song?
Yeah, I think we'll extract it eventually.
To perform, that you're asking about?
Yeah. Like, because I know sometimes with extended works, you can just get like a movement because you want to do that.
Yeah, we haven't really decided exactly which movements we'll extract, but I would assume that might be one that we would do. What's tough about that one is that it's very orchestrally based, so it's going to be hard to reduce it to a smaller orchestration.
That movement specifically,
yeah. Whereas some of the other movements, it's going to be very easy to boil them down. That one will be tricky.
But right. I guess I skipped right over the fact that the piece is called Rose Ever Blooming, and it's the Christmas story told from Mary's perspective. So it's a very, very feminist take on the story we all know, because it's all seen through her eyes. So a lot of the poetry is new or contemporary, and then it has some of these carols sort of threaded throughout the narrative where they belong. So Gabriel's Message is there. Lo, How a Rose E'er Blooming is there. What's the other one? Coventry Carol is in there. So yeah, checking the boxes of traditional versus new. But yeah.
And this is, sorry to interrupt, this is the project with Voce 8.
Yes.
Right?
So that their foundation choir, the Voce 8 Foundation Choir and Orchestra, recorded it last spring of 25. And the audio album came out last month on the streaming platforms. And then they'll do a video premiere this month, December of 25, on their Live from London online series.
That's awesome. What about in the sheet music? Is it out too, or no?
Not yet. So we're holding on to that a little bit longer. We're organizing some U.S. premieres of it, live premieres, for next Christmas, for Christmas of 26, and then we'll release the sheet music after that. But I think there are a couple movements that we might pull out as singles, like you were mentioning, and have those available before then, because I think it'd be neat to see those get some stage time. But yeah, it was a wonderful project, sort of the second big piece that we wrote together, and it was a fun place to be for a couple months, just in that music and those texts, and then to see it come to life like Voce 8 did with it was just amazing.
Now, I want to hear some more about the music in a second, but would you talk to us a little bit about just what that project was like in terms of working with them in the recording process? And of course, it's a phenomenal choir. The Voce 8, of course, is the small ensemble for those listening that don't know, but then they have like a larger ensemble that they can muster forth for bigger things. So just talk to us a little bit about what that was like, and did you get to go over there to do it? Did they come to you? Like, how did that work? Just any stories that are fun.
Oh yeah, it was really great. We We wrote the piece pretty quickly, actually, when it came right down to it. It all was a bit of a whirlwind. So we wrote it pretty quickly, finished it maybe the week or two before we left.
Yeah, there was one movement that you were working on finishing.
Yep.
At the last minute.
At the last minute, but then we sent it to them, and we had one day, one big rehearsal with just the choir. And then the next 2 days we were recording in a beautiful church. And it was the orchestra for the first time, coming in, and no rehearsals with them. They basically just read it, and we'd never experienced anything quite like that before. And the other thing to mention is that there's a fabulous virtuosic solo violin part, and it's played by Jack Liebeck. He just, I think he'd even flew in on a red eye the night before and then got the part and was just like, and there are some virtuosic parts, and he'd be playing it and he'd go, oh yeah, okay, let's do it one more time. And he'd just be able to do it. And that was unbelievable to watch, and such a treat. It's such a rarity to have your music come to life so quickly and so expertly in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. Anything stick out to you, Tim?
Well, just it's all under the Voce 8 umbrella. So I think their foundation choirs, a lot of their scholars, and then sort of friends of the organization that have sung in the past. So we saw some familiar faces that weren't in the group currently, but had been before. And just that the fact that they understand what their ensemble sound is. There was no getting the group off the ground and figuring out color and vibrato and balance. It just worked from minute one. So that was amazing to see just how quickly that came together, and the fact that they have that sound and that technique in their back pocket ready to go. And I don't know if all groups in the UK have that same singing model, that it's easy just to go from one to one to one and just sing with different groups and different conductors. But I was envious of that they had that figured out so well. And kind of fun to hear their diction, their English diction on what we were writing in our minds as American poetry. The poet Patricia Monahan was a Wisconsin dweller, and so it felt like very American poetry. But then the way that they shaped the words and their vowels, of course, is very different, and sort of added an unexpected color to what I think the sound field in our heads was when we were writing it.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. Now, was it Barnaby conducting?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting because it is kind of true that in the UK, a lot of the pro singers just show up, and they might show up for 4 different choirs, and there are certain things that they just culturally do in that sphere. I remember one time just going to London on vacation, and opening the newspaper to find, on any given day, at almost any time of day, you could just go walk somewhere and find a professional choir singing somewhere. And I just remember thinking, this was 2012, and I just remember thinking, I was born in the wrong country. What is this? This is like choir Disneyland. You feel like you're in it, so it is really incredible. And so how does something like that come to be? How do you make the connection between your project and their project? Is it you convincing them? How does this work?
Well, yeah. So I had been commissioned twice by Voce 8 at that point. So I had a great working relationship with them, and but that is because Barnaby gets sent scores music all the time, right? By all these composers that want their music sung by Voce 8. And so we really jumped up and down when he accepted the meeting.
When he said yes to the meeting, we were excited.
Yeah, he's actually going to listen to hear what we have to say about this piece. So yeah, that was getting the foot in the door, and I think it was because I had those 2 projects in recent years that was able to happen.
Yeah.
And this would have been at least 2.5 years ago that we had the meeting.
Right.
And he was able to look that far ahead and say, I've got this break in our calendar in March of 25, which was a year and a half out, or whatever it was. Said, we're just going to put the recording on those dates, and we'll work backwards from there to figure out the timing of it all. So, yeah.
And of course, that's before the music's even really done.
Oh yeah.
So
it's just on trust.
Yeah. So it was all trust. So for them, it was a commission-like experience where they didn't quite know what they were getting. I mean, I feel like when we pitch things to anybody, we try to communicate our intentions, our musical intentions, and is it going to be thorny? Is it going to be familiar? What's it going to sound like? What will people think? So our hope is that we can convey that through words and writing when there's no music that exists yet, but it's hard.
Yeah, and I think actually that Barney was excited about the fact that it was new Christmas music, because I think there's always that need for it, right? And I think he was into the idea because it's hard to have new ideas at Christmas time. You know, what can these things be? What can we bring that's new? I remember one of the things he said, he's like, I love that this is really not a vanity project. You really actually just want to create a new piece for the repertoire. And we're like, yeah, that's true. So that, I think that went a long way. And it reminds me of how important the ideas are. You know, before you put pen to paper, before you even get the idea, often takes so much more time than one might think, and you have to put a lot into that idea. And then I often find that once the idea is there, the music writes itself pretty fast. But it's that idea part that's so important.
And it's one of those ingredients that we'll need to convince people to uproot something that's traditional for them, something that's a standard, and say, let's make room for this risky new thing because it might be what we're looking for, what we've been wanting. And so I don't know. I think when we dream about the future of Rose Ever Blooming, we picture it in concert halls all over the country as the new upstart major Christmas work, because I think the writing is strong. I think the sound field and the accessibility level of the actual music is, people should be ready for it. Like, I think it's going to treat them well, and I think it just feels like Christmas, even though 75% of the music will be brand new.
Yeah, yeah, and that is important. That really the only type of music in that ballpark that I deal with, because the pro group doesn't really do large form things because we don't perform enough. Like, it just we would need to be more of a concert ensemble. And my school group, you can't really do long form things either because you're trying to, like we said before, trying to expose them to lots of different things in a program. But it's at church when I'm getting a cantata together that might be like the entire length of the service sometimes, that might be entirely music, a music-based service. And so sometimes when I'm shopping for Christmas cantatas, what you just described is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for something that sounds new, but will make the old ladies that want the songs they know not mad at me. Like there has to be both of those things. And is that kind of describes like you're throwing a bone, but at the same time, in a way that I'm assuming you felt was artistically meaningful to include those familiar tunes.
It was really fun. And honestly, when we were in the recording sessions, Barney said it would be a great project to go through and find all the Easter eggs, because it was one of the things that I know I did, and I think you did this too, but when you get to a moment when you're stuck in the compositional process where you're not quite sure what happens next, I'd be like, well, it's time for a Carol quote. I would figure out how to put something in to propel me forward with that music. And one of my favorite things is that in the middle of Gabriel's message, there's Hark the Herald Angels Sing, just in the orchestra part. And it's just really fun. And you have a beautiful quote a couple times of still, still, still.
Yeah, that whole movement. There's a movement that the text is about everyday miracles. The movement's called Miracles. And she's just sort of listing all these beautiful things that are happening. We have enough to eat. We have each other. We hold each other in the cold nights. And the baby's happy and healthy and looks at the stars and points at clouds. It's just like these everyday things. And so the skeleton of that piece is built to accommodate the melody of Still, Still, Still. So you can hear that in the horn come back throughout that. And then in the middle, there's a foreshadowing of one of the pieces towards the end of the whole work called Beatitudes. And so that shows up in the middle there too. So I think we leaned on the familiarity of quoting tunes and melodies people knew and sort of want to hear. And then also within the piece itself, we would repeat some of the new music a couple times, because I think people love familiarity, they love repetition. And even if they don't recognize what it is or when it is, there's a feeling of like, oh, I'm comfortable here. I don't know quite why, and maybe it's just the second time they've heard the same music, but it's like a sigh of relief, like, okay, I trust them. They've got my best interests in mind, which is different from through composed music where you're not quite sure what's around any corner ever.
Yeah, no, you're right. The sense of safety, especially, I would even say, especially with Christmas music.
Yes.
It may be, for a lot of people, the only time they will hear a choir live all year is in December.
Yep.
I would say probably I always describe December to people who don't know my life as tourist season.
Yes.
And I remember like learning at one point, I visited Alaska when I was like 19 or something like that. And I learned that there was a good number of people up in Alaska that during the summer months when everybody's up there visiting, many of them make enough money for the whole year in those 2 months. And because the tourist season is so heavy. And so then I thought like, oh, that's like kind of like choir people in December. There's a lot of people who do their four Messiah gigs or whatever, and it pays for 3 months of their life or whatever. and so I think like with the music that we do, we kind of have to be careful with like how much do we mess with it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I feel like we as choral musicians, we're pushing for that change and that innovation, et cetera. But for the average person on the street who only interacts with choir once a year, they kind of don't want us to. And so like, who are we serving? I guess that's the tension for me. Thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think
We get it.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We knew that was going to be a hard part about it, which is why the idea was so important. Like why it had to be such a good idea that it would stand out enough that people would want to program it.
Well, and the inclusion of Christmas carols in Rose Ever Blooming was a later addition. We had a libretto that was beautiful and complete and full, and sat with it for a couple months, and then came back to it and said, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be all new poetry and new music and new melodies that nobody's going to want 100% new at Christmas for 50 minutes or 45 minutes.
Yeah, right.
We have to meet them halfway. And so then we thought, okay, well, which carols do we like, A, and B, fit into this narrative that we've constructed out of these poems.
Sure.
That makes sense and they're spaced out. And I feel like we did a good job with that it feels really natural where those moments occur along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. So I'm so excited to hear it, which I want to talk on the way out. We'll make sure people know how they're going to be able to hear this and whatever updates that you can get. But I want to dig into one more topic, and it's kind of full circle because it kind of brings us back to where we started. When you guys are writing something together, I'm interested in a little bit of behind the scenes on how that works because, for example, we did a live performance of your Love Light a couple years ago.
I remember that. You sounded lovely on that.
Yeah. It was so much fun to perform, and it was like a little double choir kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And in my mind, I was joking about it with the singers at the time because in my mind I was like, so surely Jocelyn wrote one choir and Tim wrote the other choir. Is that like I was kind of joking, but is that what you did? And then it is okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what we did.
It's like I feel like I can just tell that that's what happened, but I wasn't sure if that happened. But in general, like how is it like, oh, you're going to write this part and I'm going to write this part? Or do you actually sit down next to each other with a piece of music and move dots and lines around together? Like describe that process for us.
Yeah, I mean, we were hoping that the collaboration or that the creation of Rose Ever Blooming would be a bit more collaborative. And in the end, we kind of ran out of time and had to split it up more and just say, okay, I want this movement, you want that, whatever. But we did touch the other movements in Rose Ever Blooming. So when it would be close to done, we would run it by the other person, maybe ask for some feedback. We also took care in incorporating some of the music from each other into the movements we were working on, just to add even more familiarity and glue for it all to kind of hold together.
Yeah, there's a moment toward the beginning where Jocelyn said, I would love for this passage from, I can't remember if that was your idea or mine, but basically like, I want you to include this moment as a preview of the next movement that I'm working on so that we see it coming 2 minutes before it shows up. So we did some borrowing of that, but really, in the course of us writing together over time, we've tried quite a variety of different ways of doing it. And so the piece you described, Love Light, is a double choir partner song. And you're absolutely right. One of us wrote one of the choirs and then gave that to the other person, and the other person took that and then wrote a second choir song to pair with it. And that's from a piece called This Is How You Love, which is a 35-minute work for choir. There are two partner songs in there, and we switched the order of the roles for both of them. So on one of them, Jocelyn went first, wrote hers, gave it to me. And on the other one, I wrote first and gave mine to her. So we both had the experience of what it's like to write into something you had been given. Some of the movements we just sat next to each other at the piano and plunked out notes and sang things and tried different things. And, you get to a pause where you're kind of stuck. And usually that means you think about it for 4 minutes. But in this case, the other person says, oh, but we could do this, and jumps in. And in that way, the process moved faster, I think.
Yeah, sometimes it did.
Sometimes. I think it was, in those cases, it was easier for us to lose sight of the direction of the piece. So the time we took, we'd have to zoom out and say, okay, what is this so far? What does it need? Where does it need to go from here? Because we were just like throwing ideas on top of ideas on top of ideas. And there was one movement where it was like a relay race. We took the text and she said, I've got a great idea for how I think this should open. And I said, okay, well, I've got a great idea for this next section. And we both decided that the third section should be a repeat of the first section. So I'd give it back to her to write the same music for new text. And so we just sort of like tossed the score back and forth until it was done, and then edited it together, I think.
Yeah.
So then when it's done, kind of going through it together to make sure you agree on how it flows together and you like how it works in context.
Yeah, we did do that.
And that's actually one of my favorite parts of the compositional process, is that editing part where you can sit back and listen and say, this is pretty good, but it's not there yet. And it's because of this moment, and it's because of this transition, and it's because of this voice leading, and identifying those spots and then going back in and fixing them. And so when we're both doing that to music we both wrote, our ears are attuned to different things. And so Jocelyn would hear a spot that I thought was fine. Maybe it was because I wrote it, maybe because I didn't write it, but she'd say, oh no, that needs work. And I'd have to say, what's wrong about it? And she'd say, I don't know. It needs to be different. So we'd go back in and maybe she'd be the one to edit that part. And I'd say, I'm not comfortable with this transition yet, or whatever it was. And so we'd work that out and figure that out. And that's where I think we had some of our arguments, was trying to see the same moment in the same way.
Yeah, because I think it's really easy to get attached to what you're writing. You start to fall in love with it. And then if it's still in that vulnerable place and you share it with someone and they're like, that's not it yet. They're like, but I love it.
It hurts a little bit.
It does. It hurts a little bit. I spend so much time on that little section.
And it's your spouse telling you.
And there's no, I mean, there have been times when we're working on things together where we had an argument about something else, something completely different from music, but I can't write music with you today. Or it's, we really just butted heads on this musical thing, and now I don't want to talk to you at dinner. I'm just,
I need a minute.
Yeah.
It bleeds to.
It does. And, I really love that. We live a life that is very intertwined. It's not just the fact that we both write music. Now we write music together. We have this publishing company that we started together. And we have a family, that element of it as well. It's very hard to separate us out. Good way to describe it. Symbiotic or mutually.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Beneficial. It is nice that we know each other well enough that sometimes we can sense what the other person needs. Like today, something was going on and I could tell Jocelyn was really stressed. And I just said, what if we just took this element out of the picture altogether? Would that be easier? And she's like, oh, it would be. So, just being able to recognize what we need. And I was having a day the other day, and I came out into the kitchen, kind of just with that Charlie Brown, pig pen cloud around my head. And Jocelyn said, do you want some lunch? I'm making some. You could have half. And I was like, that's exactly what I needed, was half of a lunch.
Someone else to make
somebody else to make a decision and just hand me a salad. Yes, that's exactly what I need right now.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it really is a blessing to be able to intertwine lives. I like how you said that, and of course in your case, it is quite literally this. You are doing the same things in your own unique ways, but then of course trying to maintain. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but trying to maintain your own sense of individual identity and what is it mean to be the composer Jocelyn, to be the mom Jocelyn? What does it mean to be the composer Tim and the dad Tim, or whatever? And then try to figure out how to intertwine those in so many professional ways. It's just a fascinating thing. And so I really, really appreciate all your willingness to share some of those insights. So before we wrap this up, let's make sure that people know how to find the Rose Are Blooming project. So where are they going to find the recordings? Can they buy it? Can they download it? Can they, even a best guess, like, will they be able to do this with their choirs next Christmas? That kind of stuff. We're thinking ahead. Thoughts?
Yeah, okay. So Rose Ever Blooming is now streaming on all the major platforms. There are a few things on YouTube. The Beatitudes Movement, which is an a cappella choral work near the end of the piece, and the Magnificat, I think, are both now on YouTube, so you can see those there. But really, head to Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen, and you can find it. And thanks for listening.
Yeah. And it's, we don't have our plans solidified for full performances yet next season, but I think one of the movements we will release right away is the Beatitudes, which is that a cappella. It's a 4-minute a cappella piece, and I think it's a gem. It just turned out really well, and I think that'll be a piece that people will want to look for and will want to consider, because I think it's beautiful, and it's secular and sacred in its own way. I think it elevates the secular to the level of the sacred in the way she's describing the world. So Mary, yeah. So I think that'll be something that people should keep an eye out for, that we'll publish soon.
And it's also not essentially Christmas. It can be done at any time of the year. So
evergreen.
Now, I'm assuming, this might be a dumb assumption or an obvious assumption, but I'm assuming when you do publish any of these, they would all be on Graphite. You would go to Graphite Publishing. You're not going to send us
Chris. Yes, that's exactly where you'd find it, the Graphite.
Okay, just making sure. All right, so Graphite Publishing. And of course, I would strongly encourage folks to head to Graphite if they don't already regularly, to find those staple pieces, but also the boutique pieces, like we talked about before. It's a great place to shop. And I also think you guys have, this is not a compensated plug, by the way, for the audience. They have not told me to say any of these things, but I think you guys have the best website search engine for choral music in the industry.
Thank you.
That is so nice.
That's one of the reasons that I come back as frequently as I do, is because I love being able to sort by voicing, by what instruments might go with it, by difficulty, all these different ways you can sort it like an intelligent search engine, and then sift through everything to get to exactly to the piece that you need. And the reason I like it that much is because I am a terrible procrastinator, and sometimes I need a piece for my choir tomorrow, and I don't have time to wait until the big publisher can ship it to me. I need to search through the website really quickly and find a easy song for a treble choir that's 2 parts and it has a violin, because I've got a violin player and I need it now.
Yep.
And that's a great thing about your website, which I love. So I thank you for the work you guys are doing, and thank you for spending an hour with me. Any final thoughts to leave people with?
Well, thank you for having us on the podcast again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you and to really dig deep into topics that not everyone wants to talk about, or, Yeah,
it feels niche, and it feels fun to sort of just like brain dump with the three of us here and figure some things out. Solve all the world's problems a little bit at a time.
That's right. And everyone's professional marital problems. We've solved those here as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Chris.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of a conversation. If you are still hearing my voice, that means you're one of the MVPs, one of the diehards, one of the real ones, as the kids say. So if you are willing on the way out to check out a few different ways that you can help me continue to make this show high quality. 1, use the promo code. That's the biggest one. At Sight Reading Factory, at mymusicfolders.com, at mychoirropes.com, at graphitepublishing.com, and endeavormusicpublishing.com. All of those take the Choralosophy checkout code, and of course now the newest one is 3-Minute Theory. You can get a 15% discount when you enter Choralosophy at checkout there. And of course, going to Apple Podcasts and leaving a positive review is very helpful there, and sharing the episodes to your colleagues in real life and on social media. All of those things are incredibly helpful and allow me to continue to create this resource for you. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.